Well, it's a Friday afternoon. It's been raining today, and I went out this morning early and walked around a little bit, and now I'm trying to get some fresh air before the sun goes down. But this drawing here by John White, he was the artist and one of the scientists on the Roanoke Ventures expeditions that came here to Roanoke Island. And his paintings, his drawings were super popular when he went back to England, or they published a book of his works in England, and I'm not sure exactly how they released them, but it was a very, very popular item. So I don't know much if he made all the money from it, or if the Queen or the Ventures, or who the partners were, but it was one of the more successful pieces of merchandise for the Ventures. And those ventures, the Roanoke Ventures, it's quite a story. It's not as simple as the Lost Colony or what we see in the play, or the simplified version of it. It was actually quite a number of years of work. Chief Manio and Wanchese went back to England, actually, and so he came back. So the Indians actually went to England, and they had these, it was promoted like a modern, just like today when you have some sort of event. Now, they didn't have TV and that sort of thing back then, but it was a promoted type of activity. They were trying to generate revenue from it to keep it going, and there was a lot of money put into it. And of course, they were very concerned about the colonists that were here, and they couldn't get back because of the storms and all of that part of the mystery, which is what we spend a lot of our time thinking about today, because it's the romantic part of it. But the business part of it was quite a story in and of itself. It was a huge undertaking, and the people who got on that boat to come here, that took a lot of, they had to be very brave, or some people would say ignorant of the dangers or whatever. There's always going to be a cynical viewpoint to it, as well as a sort of a heroic viewpoint to it. And at the end of the day, it's just humans making decisions, very important decisions, that affect their lives and their families' lives and in the future of humanity. So people have been doing that kind of thing. Humans have been explorers for since the beginning of humans, moving around, and it's a decision-making process that we'd like to think that we have some bit of control over, but we're all on our own journey. So we might not be traveling to a new world, although there's some people are ready to go to Mars, but we're still making decisions that are similar to that in our lives all the time. They're just not going to be as dramatic as as something like crossing an ocean and setting a new settlement most of the time. But we're all doing these kinds of things, and managing and risk and risk tolerance, and deciding to do this rather than this versus that. And if it's with money specifically, money's always an element, whether it's an indirect element or a direct element. It's just a unit of accounting, and most of our efforts and energies, we can sort of usually, at least roughly, estimate some sort of economic value in dollar terms on things. But if you're doing it directly with money, say you're investing directly into a business or a security or something like that, there's mathematics that you can use, but that math kind of works even when you're not doing that kind of direct. It's just not as precise, I guess I should say. But one of the things you want to there's lots of things that you need to keep in mind, and you need to develop principles and things that work for you. So there's sort of some overarching principles in risk taking and investing or whatever that that are good things to go by, and I could talk about that more at some other point in time, but there's also just some more fundamental kinds of personal things. So like, what are you good at versus what are you not good at, and how much information do you have about this or that, or how risky is this thing versus that thing, and then going in a direction that fits your abilities, where somebody else may not really have abilities in that direction. It would be two different risk scenarios for you and the other person, for example. But one of the things you need to be careful about doing is going so far into something that you're not going to have any reserve, whether that's reserve of actual money or reserve of your time or your energy or whatever that might be. And the reason that's important to try not to get in those situations, however, you still may find yourself in those situations, and you just have to get through them and have a way to deal with that as well. But the problem with that is going to the point where you have no more reserves, is that your decision-making processes become altered from what your original plan was. In other words, you're not making the decisions anymore based on what is the best decision for the project or the venture, or this or that or the other. You're making your decision based on what you think is going to allow you to survive personally, and that becomes a conflict with the big long-term goal. If you had more time and you could see something through, for example, you will get the outcome that you want. But if that gets crunched down to the point where you have no reserves to keep going, then you start making a decision based on what's best for your own survival. And so you want to try to, if you get in those positions, it's a learning experience, and that's just how that is. But when you're planning out things, try to be in the habit of not going so far into something that you're going to be forced to make decisions without a reserve. And that's probably a much longer discussion, but you can just think on that a little bit, and I love you.